income will be equal to the change in consumption, correct? Now, they're saying that, okay, remember that the change in output has to be as a result of the change in consumption or the change in government spending, because our investment is exogenous. So if it is that MPC as the change in income is equal to consumption, then it therefore means that 1 minus the MPC, or 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume times the output, will be equal to government spending. And if it is that we want to find the change in output as a result of a change in government spending, then we're going to have to transpose. So the function now would be, if we want to find a change in output as a result of government spending, would be 1 over 1 minus MPC times government spending. And the 1 over minus MPC is something that is called a simple multiplier. Now, the simple multiplier speaks that each dollar spent contributes. For example, the multiplier is, let's say the MPC is 0.25. So 1 minus 0.25, that's going to be 1 over 0.75. So 1 divided by 0.75, that is 1.33. So each dollar spent by the government contributes 1.33 units to total output. Now, the government purchases definition. All right. So remember earlier that we said that the multiplier was 1 over 1 minus MPC. But because it is multiplied by the government spending, it will be known as the government purchases multiplier, right? So, and it says that the increase in income resulting from a dollar increase in government spending. So as I said before, if the multiplier is 1.33, then each dollar spent by the government, or each dollar the government spent doing anything, will contribute 1.33 units to output or income. So example, if MPC is equal to 0.8, then the change in Y over change in G is equal to 1 over 1 minus MPC, which is 1 over 1 minus 0.8, which is 1 over 0.2, and the answer will be 5. So each dollar the government spends, so an increase in government spending causes income to increase by 5 times as much.
Oh shit, this dirty was.
The question now is, why is the multiplier greater than 1? The multiplier will always be greater than 1. Why? Because if we recall, let's see if I can go back to the equation. If we recall, it says 1 over 1 minus MPC. That is how you calculate the simple multiplier. Now, the MPC has to range from either you spend part of your money when you earn it, or you spend all of it. It cannot be greater than 1. So 1 over 1 minus MPC, the MPC cannot be greater than 1, so therefore you have to always have a value between, I don't know, 0 to something greater or something, but it cannot be less than 1. So initially the increase in G causes an equal increase in Y. All right. So initially, the increase in G causes an equal increase in Y. So the change in output is equal to the change in government spending initially. But as income increases, so does consumption. Because remember, if it is that remember we're told that the Okun's law says that there is an inverse relationship between output and unemployment. Meaning that if it is that output increases, then unemployment decreases. Because remember, if output increases, then it therefore means that the country is expanding. It means that there's economic growth. And if there's economic growth, then it therefore means that more people are being employed. So we realize that more people being employed, then the unemployment rate is going to fall. Hence why Okun's law says that there's an inverse relationship between GDP or output or income, whichever has an inverse relationship with unemployment. No, it says that the initial change in output will be equal to the change in government spending. But by the change in government spending, it means that income or output is larger. With output being larger, then it means that more people can consume because more people have money. So there's more consumption. Because if you look at a simple example, let's say I did a job and I get $1,000 for my wage. I pay the babysitter $800 for stay. The babysitter then pays the school for her child $500 for tuition. The school now pays $300 to buy for the canteen. So that's 800 plus 500. That's what 1300 plus 300. Right. So that's 1600. So we realized that initial change of the $1,000 that I received for my wage it now caused a $1,600 change. So we realized that the initial change causes something greater, and that is what the multiplier is saying, that a simple change or an initial change causes a greater change. And as it says, the initial change in output is going to be equal to the change in government spending. But with the increase in output, you realize that there's now an increase in consumption because more people have money can spend. And further, there's going to be an increase in output because remember that output is a function of C plus I plus G, right? And so now because a further increase in output, then there's going to be a further increase in consumption, then there's going to be a further increase in output, and it continues until, I don't know, until the money just gone. Right? So the impact on income much bigger than the initial change in government spending. And as I said, the final impact, remember that the final impact of the example I gave was 1600, and it's far greater than the $1,000 change that I $1,000 income that I got from, I don't know, wherever I worked. No, they're saying no, an increase in taxes. Now remember that taxes is something that comes out of consumer money. So people like me and you, it comes out of the government's pocket as well, even though them teeth it sometimes, it still come out of them pocket because remember that they are consumers as well. They are consuming as well, right? So an increase in taxes affects consumption. If it is that there's an increase in taxes, because recall that consumption is a function of output minus taxes. So if it is that, let's say output is 10 and taxes was 2, so it therefore means that may have $2 I can spend. Well, not $2, sorry, Jesus, 10 minus 2, that's 8. So it therefore means that I have $8 can spend. But if the government say, listen, I'm going to charge people more taxes because me want money to spend, and the government say, all right, fine, I'm going to charge $4 for taxes now. It therefore means that $4 going to come out of my money, out of my pocket, so now I may have only $6 I can spend. So it therefore means I have less. And remember that planned expenditure is equal to consumption plus investment plus government spending. So now, if it is that it is affecting consumption, making consumption less, then there's going to be a shift in the planned expenditure. So it's going to be a downward shift. Realize because it affects consumption. And as you can see, they highlighted there, they say you have C1 and now it's the C2. So you have a downward shift in the planned expenditure. And again, we can find the distance between the two. There's no an unplanned inventory buildup, right? And the reason why we have the unplanned inventory buildup is if it was that let's say the economy was initially at PE, right? PE is equal to Y1. I don't know if you guys can see. You guys can see the cursor on the thing? No? Yes? Or not? I don't know.
Yes, we're seeing
You can see? All right. So let's say the economy was here initially before the change. So let me go back. Before the change was here, right? And now because of the taxes, there's a fall. So now, if the economy still want, where's my cursor gone? Sure. I think you can have a laser something. No, can have a laser. Point option. Oh, good. All right, so let's say it was here, right? The economy still wants to be here. So the distance between here and the red line and the black line, the red PE line and the black PE line, the distance between the two want to be unplanned because yeah, we really want that there, so but we can't be there anymore. So it's going to be something that is unplanned. And so because of that, no, the economy is going to contract. So output is going to fall to Y2 and P2 here. So initially the tax increase reduces consumption and therefore planned expenditure. So at Y1, there is now an unplanned inventory buildup. So firms reduce output and income falls toward a new equilibrium. Solving for the change in Y. All right. So solving for the change in Y. So remember always that the change in output is equal to the change in consumption plus the change in, it has to be some change in consumption, investment, or government spending. Right? So if it is that now they say investment and government spending is exogenous, it is outside, then the change in output has to be as a result of the change in consumption. But remember that the amount we consume as consumers is dependent on the marginal propensity to consume. And remember, consumption is a function of output and tax, right? So the change in consumption has to be equal to the marginal propensity to consume, and the marginal propensity to consume refers to, remember, marginal. Anytime you hear the word marginal, it is very important that in the definition you have the word additional. If you don't have the word additional in the definition, then it would be incorrect. So the marginal propensity to consume refers to the proportion of an additional dollar earned that is spent on consumption. Right? So the change in consumption has to be the marginal propensity to consume times the change in output minus the change in taxes, because remember, consumption is a function of output and taxes. So if it is now that we're solving for Y, you know, we have to transpose, and so 1 minus MPC changing equal to minus MPC times taxes. So final result, we have change in Y is equal to, and this is going to be the taxes multiplier, I believe it is called. So the change in output is equal to the minus MPC over 1 minus MPC times change in taxes. Yes, the tax multiplier. So the definition of it is the change in income resulting from a dollar increase in taxes. So if the MPC is 0.8, then the tax multiplier is equal to, plug in the MPC value and then you solve for it. And we might be wondering why it is that the tax value has, why the tax multiplier is negative. And the reason why the tax multiplier is negative is because it has an inverse relationship. Because remember, in the consumption function, we have, it says income minus tax. And if it is that you have minus MPC, then the value that you get has to be negative, because if you divide a negative number by a positive number, then the answer has to be negative. The only way it will be positive is if you divide a negative by a negative. And we know that the MPC cannot be greater than 1. It has to be somewhere between the range of 0 and 1, because it's a portion of your income. So if you go more than that, then that mathematically. So the tax multiplier is negative because a tax increase reduces consumption, which reduces income. So it's greater than 1 in absolute value. Absolute value meaning that it is, if you have a negative number, negative 2, for example, then the absolute value of that will be 2, right? It's greater than 1 in absolute value, because a change in taxes has a multiplier effect on income. It's smaller than the government spending multiplier. Consumers save the fraction 1 minus MPC of a tax cut. So the initial boost in spending from a tax cut is smaller than from an equal increase in G. So 1 minus MPC, that's how you would get your marginal propensity to save. I don't remember if you guys did that, so I'm not going to go into that. Using a graph of the Keynesian cross to show the effects of an increase in planned investment on equilibrium level of income out. To show what? The effects of an increase in planned investment. So investment on the equilibrium level of income out. So planned investment, if investment increases, then there's going to be a shift in the planned expenditure, right? So if it says it increases, then it therefore means that the PE going to be more. So you're going to have an upward shift. And then the distance between the two going to be an unplanned drop in inventory. So firms increase output and income rises towards a new equilibrium. Now the IS curve. All right, so all of that about the planned expenditure and the Keynesian cross one, that was just so that we can understand the IS curve. And the IS curve will really be a depiction of the aggregate demand curve, because those things that we did in the planned expenditure, those are things that basically affect the demand curve. So we're going to say that the IS curve is pretty much like the IS curve. So a graph of all combinations of R, which is interest rate, and Y that results in the goods market, right? So actual expenditure output is equal to planned expenditure. The equation for IS curve is, right? So we recall that consumption is a function of income minus taxes. But now something new is that it says now that income is a function of R, which is interest rate. Right. So remember that if it is that, let's say I'm a businessman and I want to invest in something, but I need to borrow a loan or something. So if I want money to invest, I know say I'm gonna have to pay back some form of interest. So the higher the interest is, then things that me just not gonna bother want to do it anymore. So investment gonna be low. The higher the interest rate is, investment gonna be low, because it is just like demand and supply. The higher the price, the lower the demand. So, and remember that interest rate is the price of investment. So the higher the price of investment, the lower investment is going to be. So deriving the IS curve. So we're going to use the Keynesian cross model, which was using before. So we have the 45-degree line, which is where PE is equal to output, right? And now we have the planned expenditure. So, and then they give us interest rate at 1. So now what we're going to do, we're going to draw a line from here to here to find out where it touches. So this is going to be our first point.
No,
but if interest rate falls, then we expect there to be an increase in investment, right? Because it is now cheaper to get investment. So the PE curve is going to shift upward. Falling investment, interest rate rather causes an investment. We see that there. And so now when you trace it all the way down to interest rate I2, right? And then now we can trace, and then we find the IS curve. Now, why is the IS curve negatively sloped? The IS curve is negatively sloped because a falling interest rate motivates firms to increase investment spending, which drives the total planned spending. To restore equilibrium in the goods market, the actual expenditure must increase. Now, the fiscal policy and the IS curve. The fiscal policy, so the fiscal policy, when the government actually Fiscal policy refers to when the government alters the interest rate, the required reserve ratio. I don't think you guys the required reserve ratio, but to stick to interest rate for now. We can use the ISLM model to see how fiscal policy, so how the government changes government spending and taxes, affects So we can use the ISLM model to see how fiscal policy affects aggregate demand and output. Let's start by using the Keynesian cross to see how fiscal policy shifts the IS curve. So shifting the IS curve as a result of a change in G, right? Alright, so shifting the IS curve as a result of a change in G. The reason why the IS curve will shift as a result of a change in G is because remember that the IS curve on the y-axis, or the price as we might want to say, we have interest rate, right? And if it is that the interest rate does not change and there's some form of change in the planned expenditure, then there has to be a shift in the IS curve. So an increase in government spending causes an increase in planned expenditure, which increases output. So the IS curve shifts to the right because there is no change in interest rate. Shifting the IS curve as a change in taxes. Use the diagram of the Keynesian cross or loanable funds model to show how an increase in taxes shift the IS curve. If you can determine the size of the shift, okay. Shift because of a change in taxes. A change in taxes affects consumption because remember, consumption is a function of output or income minus taxes. So if there's an increase in tax, then there's a fall in consumption, so there's a fall in planned expenditure. Recall that interest rate did not change, so there has to be a shift in the IS curve. The IS curve shifts to the left, and it's a lot like the demand curve. When we were doing the demand and supply, we know that the only time there's a movement along the demand curve is because of a change in price, right? But if there's a shift in demand curve, then it has to be as a result of an exogenous factor, something outside, like for example, population, rainfall, or some I don't know, some pandemic or something. So that there will be a movement along the IS curve is if interest rates change. So the horizontal distance of the IS curve shift is equal to the change in output is equal to the minus MPC over 1 minus MPC times the change in taxes. And remember that we're going to get a negative value. So the theory of liquidity preference. So due to John Maynard Keynes, a simple theory in which the interest rate is determined by the money supply and the money demand. So this is where we're going to really go into the LM. The supply of money or the supply of real money balance is fixed, right? So we're going to see a vertical line to show that money supply is fixed. Now money demand is going to be, if it's a demand, it has to be somewhat downward sloping. So we're going to the money demand is going to be equal to, is a function of the interest rate, because I mean, if you're demanding money, the higher the interest rate, then well, demand not gonna be like so wonderful. Alright. So the interest rate adjusts to equate the supply and the demand for money. Remember that the money supply is equal to the money demand. This here is the money demand, money supply. So the interest rate one, how the Fed or the central bank raises the interest rate. Now, if the central bank wanted to raise the interest rate or something, then the central bank, they could possibly change the money supply. They want to raise money, they're gonna have less money supply because they want it to shift to the left so that it can cut the demand higher. So to increase R, the central bank will reduce M, or the money supply. Interest rate. So late 1970s. So the equal part, then. All right. All right. So the effect of monetary tightening on nominal interest rates. So nominal interest rates, key thing, nominal. So the model in the short run, we have the short run and in the long run. So in the liquidity preference model, in the short run, prices are sticky. We know that. We know that a change in this is actually interest. Inflation. Fair change from balance that monetary policy will introduce inflation. Okay, so that is inflation. All right, so nominal interest rate. So I must skip this for now. So the short one in the liquidity per Keynesian model, it says that price is sticky in short one. You know that. Nominal interest rate, the change in nominal interest rate has to be greater than 0. Right? So the actual, we're showing something in the past. Right. So the LM curve. We're going to get to realize the LM curve will be a lot like the supply curve. It will be upward sloping. Now, let's put output back into the money demand. So the money demand is going to be a function of interest rates and output. So the LM curve is a graph of all combinations of interest rate and output that equate the supply and demand for real money balances. The equation for the LM curve is, all right, so for the function of R, Y, so deriving the LM curve. So the market for real money balance is the demand and supply for money, and then we're going to use it to determine the LM curve. So remember that supply of money is fixed. Right? I don't know why one. All right. So realize that, let's say here that the demand for money is a function of the interest rate and output, because if it is that let's say output increases, then of course people are going to be demanding more money because there's more money there. So if it is known that output changes from Y1 to Y2, then we're going to see a shift in the demand for money, right? So there's going to be an upward shift, and because of that, we can now derive the LM curve. So from R1, so R1 is going to move to here, and then we'll match the points, and then upward sloping LM curve. Why the LM curve is upward sloping? Because an increase in income raises money demand. So since the supply of real money balances, and the reason why an increase in income raises money demand is, for example, if it is that, okay, I was earning 10,000 as before, but now the economy are growing something and I'm getting 20,000 more, than naturally I'm probably going to want to spend more money because I say, yeah, I probably want braff or something a little bit. So hence why people going to be demanding more money when there's an increase in income. And another thing is, well, the marginal propensity to consume kind of ties into it as well, because it's a portion of each dollar earned, so so you're gonna be spending more money. So since the supply of real balances is fixed, there is no excess demand in the money market at the initial interest rate. So the interest rate must rise to restore equilibrium in the money market. All right. So how a change in money supply shifts the LM curve. All right. So a shift in money supply, leftward shift. Why am I skipping like this? So leftward shift in the money supply causes interest rates to rise from R1 to R2. And as I said before, it did not say, remember that it did not say that output change. So we realize the output has to remain the same. So it remains the same and interest rate increase. So we match the points and then realize that there's a leftward or upward shift in the LM curve. Shift in the LM curve. Suppose a wave of credit fraud causes consumers to use cash more frequently in transactions. Now, credit fraud, I remember when I was doing this question, I never really understand it. But a credit fraud is, if there's a credit fraud, if you have my bank card or something, and then one bag of people are coming and thief the money out of the ATM machine, them or thief the money out of, naturally, me go on, take out my money out of the bank and put it on my mattress or something. So, of course, I go demand more money. So use the liquidity preference model to show how these events shift the LM curve. Right. So there's going to be an increase in the demand for money. And because of an increase in the demand for money, we realize that the interest rate is going to increase, but remember that there's no change in output. So we match the points just like what we did before when there's a change in money supply. And then we find that. So the short run equilibrium. Now output is a function of consumption, investment, and government spending. IS curve, and then we use the liquidity, we use the LM curve now. Right. So the short run equilibrium is the combination of R and Y that simultaneously satisfies the equilibrium condition in the goods and money market. So the equilibrium interest rate, the equilibrium level of income. Now from the Keynesian cross model, we get the IS curve. And from the theory of liquidity preference, we get the LM curve. And together, they form the IS LM curve, which is the same thing as the aggregate demand and the aggregate supply curve. Right? And then that's how you get the model of aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and it explains short run fluctuations. I don't know if we do it in a chapter after this, I'm not sure. So we'll finish. So in chapter 12, we will use the ISLM model to analyze the impact of policies and shocks, learn how the aggregate demand curve comes from the ISLM, use the ISLM and the ADAS model together to analyze the short run and long run effects of shocks. Use our model to learn about the Great Depression. Now, from this chapter, we learn from the Keynesian cross that we learn the basic model of income determination takes fiscal policy and investment as exogenous. Fiscal policy has a multiplier effect on income. The IS curve comes from the Keynesian cross when planned investment depends negatively on interest rate, shows all combinations of interest rate and output that equate planned expenditure with actual expenditure on goods and services. The theory rather of liquidity preference, basic model of interest rate determination takes money supply and price level as exogenous. An increase in the money supply lowers the interest rate. The LM curve comes from the liquidity preference theory when money demand depends positively on income, and it shows all combinations of R and Y that equate demand for real money balances with supply. ISM model intersection of IS and LM curves show the unique point output and interest rate that satisfies equilibrium in both the goods and money markets. Right, let me see if I can just go through one of the bring up a problem set and go through them through it rather than go through another lecture slide. All right, so go through this. So suppose a country's production function is equal to that. Right. K is the amount of land, L is the amount of labor. The economy begins with 100 units of land and 100 units of labor. Using the relevant equations found in chapter. But is this an old problem set? Well, the first one, it's not company exam, so I can skip that. Consider an economy described by the following. I don't think it is. So let's see if I can break up something else.
Up. Yo, bro. Yeah, deal it.
All right. Assume. Okay. Assume that Jamaica's economy is described as that. So can keep on with ISO. Assume that the dollar is runs a balanced budget. Use a classical ISLM model to find the equilibrium values of interest rate, consumption, Guys, please note that in the classical model equilibrium, output is always equal to the full employment level of output. Note that in alright, so and let me work question 1 since it has something to do. So they say find the values of interest rate, consumption, spending, investment, and price. All right. So we can just get a wide. All right. Just pardon my writing. It won't look so nice. So it says that we want to find interest rate, right? So remember that output or y. So we're told that output is equal to C plus I plus G, right? And this is the function of we know that output is 2000. So 2000 is equal to C plus 500 plus 0.5 y minus t I plus G. So G is 100. So let's say G is 100, right? In the equation, we have Y and we have T. We know that output or income is going to be the same because remember this is Y already, so it's going to be the same thing because remember that we were told that consumption is a function of output minus taxes, and we might be questioning why is there a 500 here. The 500 is there because I'm sure we all learned that there's something known as autonomous consumption. So even if you don't make no money at all, you still have to consume something, you still have to eat something. So that's why this is the autonomous consumption. So I think when we did it was A plus BY, where B was the MPC. So this here is the MPC. So now 2000 is equal to 500 plus 0.5, 2000, because remember it's Y, minus, we're told that G is 100, and remember that the amount of money government spend is the amount of money they earn in taxes, right? So that's 100 plus 460 minus 50R plus 100 plus 100. All right. So I'm going to let's see if I can group the like terms to 2000. I may skip a few. Not 500. Daddy has some call about, okay? I'm doing something. Um, 0.5. So 2000 minus 100, so that's 1900. What happened to something? 1900 close the brackets, plus 460 plus 100 minus 50 r. is equal to 500 plus, it's a half of 1900, 9 and 9 get 18, so 950. Plus 460 plus 100 minus 50 r. Alright, so 2000 is equal to, so 500 plus 950, that's 1450 plus 460, that is 1850, 1910. So all right, 500 plus 950, that's 1450 plus 460, 1850 plus 60, 1910 plus 100, 2010. All right, so minus 50r. Right, now we want to group the like terms, so I'm going to split it here. I can all over the place, but so we want to carry over this to the left hand side to get the 50r by itself, or we want to group like terms. So 2000, remember, if you come over the equal sign, then the sign has to change. Minus 2010 is equal to 50r. 50r, right? So here now we have negative 10 is equal to 50r. Now if we want to find r, we have to divide 2 by 50, right? So if we divide 2 by 50, then we're going to have, by negative 50 rather, negative 10 divided by negative 50 is equal to r, and then 1/5 or 0.2 is equal to r. So the interest rate is 0.2. Alright, so now that we find the interest rate R, we can find consumption. I'm not going to go over all of that again. So to find consumption, remember we're told that, let me just erase this. I can erase it, right? I think. I want to take a picture of it or something. I don't know. Alright, so we want to find consumption. We're told that consumption is equal to wait, I did something wrong. I had a minus 50R. So it's supposed to be minus, it should have been minus 100. Minus 100R. I didn't see that. So if it's minus 100R, so the answer should be 0.1. So R is 0.1. Sorry. So now we want to find consumption. Oops. Want to find consumption. So 500 plus. We already know that y minus t is going to be equal to 1900 times a half, so 950 minus 50 times. 500 plus 950 minus 10% of 50 hour. 5 minus 5. So should be 500 plus 950 for 1450 minus 5, 14.5. Look at my calculations around so. Sorry, 0.265. Yeah, right. Now to find investment. Investment is 460. That's what, yeah, man. 460 minus 50. Alright. And we're told that we know that and put yeah, for it. Alright. So now what we want to do, we want to find price. Right? If you want to find price, so real money demand is equal to number. Like y is equal to 4,700. So to find price, P price supply